Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to do a little disassembly, maintenance, and improvement on this little knife right here. This is the Camillus Wildfire. And this is a really weird knife in a bunch of ways, but not the least of which is the fact that this is a G&G Hawk collaboration with Camillus. Not the Camillus you all remember, but the zombie Camillus that has come up since 2009, I think. But either way, sorry about that. It's an interesting little knife, and yeah. So one thing to highlight is that my review is actually going to cover all three of these guys, the Sizzle, the Wildfire, and the Heat. And these two I have already disassembled and maintained. And, well, disassembly and maintenance is a more important thing here than most because, well, these knives come terribly done from the factory. I get the impression that the factory is just making sure that all the pieces are present in the box, and then, that's about where it ends for them. And so these are not in very good adjustment. And so when I first got these out of the box, basically, thank you very much to my buddy Sean for sending these guys along. There is substantial side-to-side blade play as well as some vertical blade play on the knife. And so it turns out that by taking them down, you can mitigate that a fair amount. So let's go ahead and start doing this. This is a T8 Torx driver right here. And this back here, I believe, is T6. And we'll go ahead, come on now, and pop this little guy loose here. This is sort of an involved disassembly, but at some level it's actually fairly straightforward. And then inside here are these two screws, both of which are T5, which is kind of unusual in the knife world, and I wish it were more unusual than it is. T5 is not a screw, it's a war crime. Let's be real here. Alright, so there's this little tiny freaking T5 screw. And we'll pop this one out as well. That one didn't have any thread locker. A resounding theme with this knife is that the factory was just not ready for this. They had no idea what they were about to do with themselves, and so they did their best, but they weren't quite there. And so, there we go. We have the knife apart here, at least to the extent I'm going to take it apart during the course of this disassembly. Pop this guy loose, this little guy loose, and we'll take it from there. We can see, though, already the innards of this lock working here. I'll start cleaning things out here as we're doing this. We can see that there's a little more to this knife than meets the eye. Certainly looking from the outside here. Got this little bar over here, which I believe to be the detent on the knife. So that's actually not super uncommon, especially with unusual locking mechanisms, to have a detent bar that is completely independent, because on most locks, the detent is, the strength of the detent is held in by the frame lock or the liner lock, something like that. But on this knife, as well as some others, I believe Emerson uses this system. Trying to think who else. This little separate guy here allows you to dial in the detent. And so if your knife has a really weak detent, you can pull this little bar up or back it back down as you see fit. So that's kind of a neat little thing. Nice little touch. And that's the case because with a toggle lock like this guy, it's not a Hawk lock. Which is what a lot of people think of at first, like you'd see on the Hawk mod or something like that. But it's hard to get something that resembles an actual detent out of it. And so they're using this detent bar here basically to try and make that work. Just cleaning off these little tiny bearings. I mean, seriously, look at the size of these bearings. Okay, guys. You know what? There we freaking go. Look at the size of these bearings. Can tell it's a little early and I'm not quite with it yet, but that's okay. So, yeah, these are tiny little bearings. Now we'll clean this little liner off here. Just degunking here. I don't know what they used at the factory in terms of lubrication, but it's not great. Don't bother undoing these screws. As a matter of fact, do not undo those screws. It won't win you anything, and there's not a lot of point to it, so just no. No. So yeah, and then this little guy in here is the actual toggle. Again, you don't need to undo that piece unless you're a masochist. And, I am not, so there you go. Everything else is cleaned off here. So we can see here one important part of this mechanism is that you've got this little stud pushing out of the blade only on one side. This functions not only as your stop pin, so you can see here that there is this little guy, at least in the closed position, but also as a, well, just overall, it helps to give this little lever something to grab onto. So actually, let's just start reassembling. And I'll kind of show you how this lock works as best I can. I am not the Hawks, mind you. But, you know, as we're doing so, and hopefully you'll get a little better sense how this thing works. It's a neat little mechanism. The very best part of this knife is this lock. And without this lock, this knife would be, well, yeah. I will admit to being a Hawk fanboy. Grant and Gavin Hawker, just crazy buggers. Every damn thing they do is weird, and I love it. Because so much in the knife world is just the same thing over and over again. And for these guys to be doing something that is just so strange, so regularly, brings me joy. Next thing I'm going to show off here is your stop pin. I'll clean it off as well. This is the blade stop pin, and what we see here is that this is a little unusual in that there is, so here we go. This is the stop pin itself, so it's D-shaped on one side over here, which keeps it in position, and then it's got this little Allen key here, and the pin itself is a set screw, which allows you to adjust the lockup, basically. So this is how you avoid vertical blade play, which happens when the blade of the knife is able to move back and forth between the lock and the stop pin. See, here you can push the stop pin slightly forward. There are many ways that people have done this, have had the stop pin in some adjustable manner. There is the TSF, Three Sisters Forge approach, in which you have sort of an oblong stop pin and then you cam it around in order to change that distance. This set screw approach is another nice one. In some ways, it's a little easier to adjust than some of the other approaches. You know, it's a double-edged sword, which means that, you know, if you find yourself suddenly developing vertical blade play, that set screw's moving and you need to go in there and tweak it again, but that's not so super hard to do, so okay, whatever. Note that I've put a bearing in there on the other side there as I'm reassembling. And I'm using a little bit too much lubricant because I am who I am, like Popeye. There we go. Slide that in there. Beautiful. Okay, what else am I forgetting here? Nothing at the moment. All right. So next step is going to be to stack this liner on top of this. So make sure that my stop pin is in position here. There we go. That's in. Now I'm going to want to screw these little tiny freaking screws in there using the tiny freaking T5 driver. T5 is... I'm almost okay with it on really tiny little interior screws like this. And in fact, that's where you see it more often than not. Some makers will use it externally. I want to say Thorburn gets down to T5 in some of their body screws. But, oh man, does it bug the crap out of me. Because it's just not super reliable. At that point, there's so little material left, it strips out easily, etc. Using blue Loctite, which is a beautiful thing. Come on now. There we go. These screws suck. Come on, get in there. You little bugger. There we go. He says, dreaming that it'll actually go in. No, no, so close. Yes, maybe, yes. Hey, victory. Alrighty. I'm just going to snug this down as tight as I can. I feel like this isn't actually T5 there. Like they've done it not to spec. But okay, so now this little area is in there, and the stop pin is in place, which is good. You can see here that the lock here, in addition to providing a little bit of a stop on this side, which is nice, this little stud here is traveling throughout this track as the knife is open. Okay, so now we'll put back together the locking mechanism. And so this works as follows. Let's see here, get this properly untangled. There we go. All right. So you put this little guy around this little hole here. Around this little stud, if you will. Now, just get a little lubrication in there, because why not? this little spring is an important step here. Its long-term robustness, I'm not so sure about, but hey, whatever. Little bugger. Pop that out of there, but that's okay. I'll lubricate that little pin a little bit as well. Alrighty. It's because I'm doing it upside down that I'm having trouble here, but that's okay. Hashtag not a brilliant man. Now, what we can see here are a couple of things. Whoops. This little pin sits flush inside this piece here. And I don't know the formal name for this. It's a toggle lock, but I've not worked with enough of them to actually be able to talk intelligently about them. But what we can see here is that this little stop pin here, or I don't know what to call it, is stopping it from going any further in this direction. And then this goes around the actual blade onto this little pin down here, which is good. So when you are able, basically, on this knife, in order to close the knife, what you do is you apply. So this little slider has a little collar, which grabs a little lever, which grabs onto this little guy here. And so, effectively, when I slide that back, what this does is it pushes this little guy down. And because of all these various levers and fulcrums, that actually ends up pulling the blade back. And when the blade gets pulled back, it gets to a certain point where this spring will actually pull the blade the rest of the way in there, which is a beautiful thing. And then when you want to deploy it, it'll push back the other direction. And so it pops the blade out. Not enough that it's an automatic, mind you, but it starts to pop the blade out. And then eventually, well, that's not supposed to come flying off, and it doesn't when the knife is properly put together. This really does rely on this being made to spec such that it's everything's held against the blade. But anyways, that's how this little locking mechanism here works. I'm going to add just a little bit more lubrication in here because I am Nick Shabazz and I over-lubricate things. At least I know my sin, right? And we'll drop everything back onto here. This part is fiddly, 100%. Because what I'm trying to do here, get this little thing out of the way here. I'm trying to do is drop this little hole onto this little pin here. And that's not a straightforward process. So I'm going to try and get this roughly into position where I want it to be, and then, did I just get that freaking lucky? Really? I think I did. Holy crap, I dropped it on there, I think, the first go. No, I screwed it up. What's off here? Oh, no, it just popped loose on the outside. All right, whatever. I was so close, yet so far. So I know roughly that this needs to be at the very end of its extension when the blade is locked open. There we go. I think I've got that in there. I'm going to make that bet here. It's not a great bet to make. If the betting markets are watching this video with great interest, I would not give me good odds. But you know what? Hey. The jackass betting market, I'm sure, is a huge thing these days. Bam. Okay, there's that. And I'm just tightening that down. Actually, I'll tighten it down a fair amount because I want things not to pop loose in there. Is my stop pin not seated? My stop pin is not seated. Come on. Why is my stop pin not seated? Here, I'll pop it. Okay. I'm going to try that one more time. Now it's seated. That's now as tight as I'm going to get it. Hey, it looks like I've done the trick here. It's way overly tight, but it is there. Okay, now I'm going to tighten back this, or tighten down this back screw here as well. If I'm able to do this effectively, oh, come on, you little bugger. If I'm able to do this effectively, this will be a record for me personally in dealing with this particular model. The first one took me, I think, 25 minutes. Second one, 16 minutes. So I am improving. Okay, that's tightened down. Oh, yeah. Okay, now I need to back down the tension on the pivot a little bit here. This is what's going to fix your horizontal blade play, is tweaking the pivot tension. No horizontal blade play. Solid action. Good to go. Okay, vertical blade play. Actually, I have coincidentally fixed that, but I'll show you how you would adjust it anyways. So you can see here that right from the top here is visible that little Allen key, that little Torx key bit there. And to get in there, I believe you're using T6. That is a T6 Torx bit. And so you need one that's a little longer than this little screw would allow. And so you can just reach in there with your little key and hit that little pin there, and then just tweak it out or in a little bit. Okay, so now the knife no longer locks up. Because I tightened that a little bit too much, the knife is no longer able to get into its fully locked position. So you've created a slip joint, which is no good. So let's go back the other direction. Now the knife locks up. That's a big distinction there. So if you end up with a slip joint Hawk Wildfire, well, that's what went on there. But unfortunately, I've gone too far the other direction and we got blade play. So let's tweak it back, see if we can find the Goldilocks range where the knife still locks up. And it does indeed lock right up, but there's no vertical blade play. I'm going to give it just a tiny bit more love here. No vertical blade play. Actual lockup. That is solid. No horizontal blade play. We are freaking good to go here. And the thing is, by doing this, by going through this process, this fun little 16 minutes here, we've taken this knife from being a knife that feels very janky, for lack of a better term. That's just not well put together. And we've done the assembly properly, for lack of a better term, such that it will now, well, it works. It's a pretty solid little knife. And so that's really, I'll touch on this in the review, but that's the terrible and wonderful thing about this knife, is that it is so close to working nicely. The factory just completely does not care enough to dial it in properly. And that's kind of neat, kind of sad all at once. So anyways, there you go. That's how you disassemble, maintain, and seriously improve your Camillus Wildfire by the Hawks. And hopefully you found this interesting. And if you've got one of these, do this. It will really make a difference for you in this knife. And have yourselves an absolutely spectacular rest of your day. Bye now.